Old School Lane Casual Chats is brought to you by Old School Lane, producing various content from blogs, videos, and podcasts discussing about movies, TV shows, video games, and everything else in between since 2011. You can check out the podcast on Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, Overcast, Breaker, Pocket Cast, and YouTube. We're associated with Channel Frederator, Manic Expression, The Comic Book Cast, and The Arun Mehta Show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Casual Chats. I am Patricia, and as of the recording of this podcast, this week is going to be the 30th anniversary of Weinerville, and I have with me a very special guest who's just as much of a huge Weinerville fan as I am. So why don't you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Manny, and I pretty much watched Weinerville since its inception back in '93.
Yeah, and I've seen a few videos on your YouTube channel, and you have this really distinct Weinerville style whenever that you introduce your segments.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I've been trying to do anniversary videos for the last few years, and as of the recording of now, I'm currently working on my 30th anniversary episode right now.
Awesome.
So,
That sounds great.
thank
So,
you.
yeah, why don't you talk about how you first got introduced to the show?
Oh boy. Well, in '93, that's when I first got cable. And so seeing commercials for Weinerville was always just a unique experience too, because it would be so colorful and be in your face at the same time.
Hmm.
So I don't know, that just sort of really attracted me to that because I saw the Nicktoons and whatever, but Weinerville just had this really special energy and just weirdness to it. And it just captivated me. And I just could not miss it. Like I loved it. I recorded it and I watched it over and over until like some tapes were worn out, or if I just like, yeah, if whenever it came on, I just made sure I watched it, and sort of it sort of went away, but I got back into it in 2006 after seeing an episode of Ned's Declassified, and I was like, oh my God, that's Mark. And a lot of my friends were like, who's Mark Weiner? I've never heard of that. So I showed them the Weinerville show from the episodes that I recorded, and they were like, interesting. So obviously the show is not for everybody, but to me, it's a very special show.
Yeah. I guess my story is kind of like similar to yours. In 93, I remember seeing a commercial for it, and already I was like a huge fan of like Pee-wee's Playhouse growing up, and so I decided to like tune into a guy who had this huge world called Weinerville, and he had like a whole bunch of puppets, and he had a whole bunch of people participating. So I remember that, and they were also like airing like Muppets Tonight and various other things. And I've always been a huge fan of variety shows with puppets in it. And so when I tuned in and I saw it for the very first time, I thought, it was really interesting. And it was this really unique take on like a variety show from like the 50s and 60s. And I remember that whenever they would like promote, like, oh, it's airing on, it's lively shown on Nickelodeon Studios in Orlando, Florida. And I remember I really wanted to go there so badly just so I can be able to see that, or maybe, be a part of like Nickelodeon Guts or Legends of the Hidden Temple or something like that. But I didn't get to go over to Nickelodeon Studios until 99. But by that point, everything's already been finished, and I was already like, I think it was already like 13 years old at that point. So I kind of like was slowly moving away from my Nickelodeon phase. But yeah, I was like one of those people who fondly remembered it when nobody else did. It was my best friend Kevin and I, and we were the ones who were like talking about Weinerville while everybody else was talking about a whole bunch of other shows that we also enjoyed. But yeah, something about Weinerville was kind of like an inside joke between the two of us. So yeah, so I guess we can start talking about it. So Yeah, I think that the way that Weinerville is presented. Now, for those who don't know what Weinerville is, it's a variety show hosted by Mark Weiner. That's where the name Weinerville comes from, for those who are wondering. And every single time that an episode would air, he would open up with a cold open with the mayor of Weinerville, Dottie, and her assistant Zip, also played by Mark. And believe it or not, Zip is played by Scott Fellows, who nowadays you might know as a major writer for things such as Fairly Odd Parents. He created Ned's Declassified. He created Big Time Rush, and he also was the creator of Johnny Test and various other shows. He would write episodes for Nickelodeon, and it's kind of funny because I remember when I was talking about the Weinerville Election Day special, and they had the main bad guy, which was Hugh J. Magnet, and there was a Fairly Odd Parents TV movie that had the villain named Hugh J. Magnet Jr., and I was the probably the only person who even made that connection. So I just thought it was pretty funny. Anyway, so throughout the show, they would be showcasing a cartoon, which was basically like how a lot of these variety shows were, where it would like showcase like a 7-minute cartoon that was basically like mostly public domain. But at the time, there were Columbia cartoons, and there were cartoons from UPA, which Nickelodeon had the rights to at the time, like Mr. Magoo and Gerald McBoing Boing and The Alvin Show. And then cut in between, there would be like the storyline that would be happening throughout the show. Mark would even sometimes, dress up in characters like Captain Ozone. There was also Captain Bob, and even with there were a lot of segments like the Boney segments, and there was even Cocktail Frank and his Weenies. And then the end of every episode, he would bring two kids from the audience, and they would be wienerized, which was basically like a term where you have like their heads in like small little puppet bodies. They'll be playing games, and whoever won got the golden hot dog trophy. And yeah, that's basically how an episode of Weinerville played out. So yeah, Manny, why don't you share some of your fondest memories of watching the show, or even any favorite moments of the show?
Well, definitely. I'd like to bring up as well. I dressed up like Cocktail Frank when I was 9 years old.
Oh, nice.
I did. I told my parents, like, I need that rainbow wig and I need that backwards hat and everything. And I would just be like, like I said, I was 9 years old. So I was like walking out, doing like the little hops that he does, in the puppet body. And no one knew who I was, but I knew who I was, and that made it special. But it was just hilarious just looking back to that. Like, wow, that must be the most obscure Halloween costume anybody could probably muster up, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm sure that in like 93, I'm sure that there were a lot of like common costumes that people would be like trying to dress up as, maybe like Batman or Spider-Man or something. But yeah, like Cocktail Frank and his weenies, that's a very unique one. I'm sure
Oh
you've
my
probably gotten
God.
like a lot of people questioning on like what costume you're wearing, and you try to explain it, and they'll be like, "What are you talking about?"
It's true. It's really true. In fact, like whenever I would see Weinerville being played on somebody else's house or maybe in a doctor's waiting room, that would be so mind-blowing because much like you, I always thought that it was an inside joke between myself as well because I'm like, no one else probably watches this. I'm like, I'm its audience. I love it. So,
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's true. Variety shows, I guess it depends on which one. They cater to a specific audience. Like, the humor is a little bit, corny and a little bit like really wacky and over the top. And I take it that, for a lot of people, they might think of it as just like really juvenile, while others are saying, like, no, I get the joke because it's supposed to be that way. It's supposed to be like a take on, variety shows from that time period. So I already knew what the joke was, but I guess a lot of people probably didn't.
yeah, that's very true, I would say.
Yeah, and I also think that another reason why the show is really unique is because, I mean, when you think of puppets, you think of like, Jim Henson Muppet style, or you think of hand puppets like from Mr. Rogers or something like that, or you even think of like people in costumes. You don't think of giant heads on tiny little bodies. That's something that is still unique to this very day.
It's definitely Mark's vision and it's incredible. Like I didn't know this up until about close to 15 years ago. He was on Comedy Central for a long time and he got his start like just doing stand up as the head puppets every now and then. But he started out with like props, sort of like a carrot top style thing, which he brought to Weinerville in the general store bits. And the head puppets were definitely a big part of the show called Random Acts of Variety, where he got to like spread his wings and invent these characters. Like that's where Dottie and Baby Jeffrey came from, was that variety show. And when he got the show on Nickelodeon, according to David Jordan, who's like the prop master and stuff, they all rustled all together to mimic Mark's style to sort of like invent this whole world like Weinerville. And it was just like mind blowing to Mark when he was making the show. It was like, wow, I remember building this in my basement, and here it is. It's a whole big studio of my style, and it's incredible. So it was just like a great, it felt like a ragtag team of do-it-yourselfers that just can like make a show, and it's exciting.
Yeah, and he also told me a long time ago about, what made him come up with the idea for this is that, he was working as a street puppeteer in Boston. And then when he came over to New York City, he joined the Bond Street Theater Group. And they asked him to do a puppet show, and he basically did. And then he developed the style that we know today for Weinerville on a nightclub act because he wanted to be able to perform many puppets on stages. And, he didn't want to have the audience wait for the next puppet to come out. And then, he would have the puppets lined up so that he can be able to do it one by one by one so that it will be quick and to the point. I remember like many years ago when I first interviewed Mark on my Old School Lane blog. This must have been like way back in 2012,
I
where
remember that. That's where I first heard your show.
yeah, so I was looking up clips on YouTube of like when he did like the Rocco and Tony, which eventually became like a more rougher prototype of Sacco. And then of
Mm.
course he had like all of his other stuff that he would have presented where like for his stuff on SNL and his stuff on all of his other TV shows where he just showed off his puppetry. And that's where essentially he came up with his inspirations for Weinerville. And I remember reading the New York Times article of God and Weinerville, where it told his whole life story about him wanting to get into comedy, and also with the passing of his first son and how much he loved that show so much. In fact, in every single episode of Weinerville, whenever that you hear the credits of a kid laughing, that was his son. And that was like the thing that he felt so much joy into doing when even doing Weinerville after he passed on. And I just thought that that was like really sweet. It's actually one of my favorite articles that I've ever read on New York Times, where it was focusing on a specific person, because you get to see that it's not just, oh, this is just like goofy stuff and and whatever. It's something that he genuinely loved doing. And you can still see to this day, if you check out the Weinerville YouTube channel, that from time to time he and his son Max would be able to do various videos with the Weinerville style of puppets, and they're able to do great causes like stopping water pollution or stuff like that. So
Oh
yeah, I
yeah.
think that that's still fantastic. And the characters are also great too. I mean, like, Dottie, Zip, Boney's a fan favorite for a lot of people. There's also Pops and various other characters. And yeah, I think that, with all those personalities, they're distinctly different, even though Mark is for the most part playing most of them. And I think that that really stands out about how much of a great actor Mark is, especially since he has all that personality put on the screen.
Oh yeah, like it's just split personalities. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I like to also piggyback on what you just said about his kids being an inspiration. If you look really hard on the set, I'm sure you have. There's a street light, and it says Max and Rebecca, and right behind him there's a store that's called Avi's Song. So that was like his his tribute to his kids. And
Yeah, so
I didn't know
Max,
that till
Max,
years later.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, Max and Rebecca, that's his son and daughter, and then Avi was his other son that we just mentioned earlier, who had sadly passed away when he was very young. And
Yeah.
Avi's song is basically like a reference to the laugh that you would hear in the credits of every episode of Weinerville.
Now that I never knew that. That's incredible.
It is very incredible. Again, read that New York Times article of God in Weinerville. Highly
Oh,
recommend you check it out.
definitely.
Yeah, so another thing that I thought was really interesting and that kind of made it very unique again was like the cartoons that they used to show. Now, again, very similar to like various variety shows, especially with Pee-wee's Playhouse at the time, they used to show a lot of cartoons, whether they were mostly public domain or they had the rights to at the time. And what did you think of the cartoons that they would showcase?
They would usually be hit or miss. I remember watching it with my parents, and usually Mr. Magoo would be like the one that would be like, "Oh wow, I remember this." Everything else that would be like, "Never heard of this." I would say, a lot of enjoyment that I got as a kid from watching the cartoons was probably mostly the Alvin show shorts. I really enjoyed those because Nickelodeon started running that show as well. But looking back on it, watching Weinerville now as an adult, I would say that I think the cartoons kind of slow things down because I mean, even according to Mark, he's I was actually on a podcast earlier with him too, and he mentioned that on the cartoon segments they didn't like it because his writer Rhea Bruzo would be like, "We have all these ideas, but we have to cut these short because of the cartoons." So I think they didn't have a say so in the cartoons. They just sort of were forced into doing that. So I'm sure they would have preferred to do Weinerville as just a show, but the cartoons probably just had to be a part of it, I guess.
Yeah, I even talked about that with him many years ago, where if they would have gotten a season three, they would have removed the cartoons altogether.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely do agree that the cartoons were mostly hit and miss, and some of them were definitely much better than others, and they definitely do slow the pace. Like you're thinking about like, okay, now we're about to go into the main plot, but it's like, oh no, we have to show a cartoon. I mean, literally, there's an entire episode called Missing Cartoon where all the cartoons are missing, and they're trying to find a way to entertain everybody on Weinerville with the missing cartoons, and they don't know exactly what to do.
It's ironic how on the first half they showed two cartoons, right?
Yeah, like I'm sorry, how did you get these if they're
Yeah,
missing?
if they're missing, like, why are they showing cartoons? It
I
would have
mean, you
been better if they would have just showed Mark or something trying to act out a cartoon as a puppet or whatever. That would have been great.
or maybe they could have like taken a cue from home movies from Rugrats in which he would have like drawn like a whole bunch of skits and then you just kind of like try to paper flip it into making it look like a cartoon or something.
Oh, that'd be great. Him and Sako could have done that. That would have been hilarious.
That
You
would
know,
have been yeah, that's actually a really great idea.
I was actually and I mentioned this earlier too. I apologize. I was on another podcast called Big Orange Couch, and
Oh yeah,
that
sure. I Big Orange Couch. I know those guys.
they were that was actually my first episode was DTV, and I think Joey or Andrew might have mentioned it would have been interesting how you remember Dottie did Smoozing with the Stars with the cast of Clarissa Explains It All,
Yes.
and they did like interviews with everybody, but it would have been better if they didn't show the cartoons and we would have saw the interviews with Sean O'Neill and Jason Zimbler. That would have been fantastic.
Oh, that would
But
be really interesting, especially
yeah,
with Dottie being a politician. And, if Jason Zimbler's, played as Ferguson and he was super Republican because he was trying to be like Alex from what was it? What was it? Strange Ties or something like that. And
right.
yeah, I think that, it would have been really interesting to hear about like, Dottie's, take on how to run Wienerville, and then, maybe like Ferguson would have made like a political joke or something like that.
That would have been a really great side story. Absolutely.
Or if they're gonna have basically Sean O'Neill, who was Sam, I'm sure that they probably would have like maybe like he and Cocktail Frank would have talked about music or something like that.
Oh yeah. Like I
But
mean,
yeah,
in that
it's
short
true.
clip, it showed that they were kind of dancing, but
Yeah, exactly.
we
Yeah,
don't really know.
I do agree that even though that seeing those cartoons was pretty cool, and I'm sure that this is how a lot of kids were introduced to cartoons like Mr. Magoo or Gerald McBoing Boing or Bat Fink or even the Alvin Show. Yeah, on the context of what kind of show it was, a variety show, it made a lot of sense because they used to do that, but for the most part, they would show like one cartoon. I mean, even with Pee Wee's Playhouse, whenever they showed cartoons, it was like maybe a minute long tops. And then
Oh
they would have the
yeah.
penny cartoons, which was like about less than 30 seconds or something. But even then, the
Absolutely.
most for the most part, the focus was on the show itself. And yeah, if you were to take, and they showed the entire thing, like all 7 minutes long of that
Oh,
cartoon,
yeah.
and sometimes it would show two or even three of them,
I know it.
which is like that's half of the show right there.
That shows kind of a difference of season one because those first episodes were like, it's time for a cartoon. So maybe they were just like, we don't know how to force a plot here. So we're like, it's a cartoon.
Yeah.
So they just kept on forcing just the cartoons in the beginning. But I'm happy they sort of got out of that towards the middle of season one into season two, where they just did these outlandish storylines. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it became really crazy like towards the end of season two when they started bringing in like Professor Fotzfate and Eric von Verst and also with Commander Ozone. That's when things started getting like really insane.
oh, absolutely. Like the show's budget, I'm sure, went up a little bit, and they just got to have fun and just make like more puppets. I loved it. That's why it kills me to like I really wish that Paramount Plus would like have this show or at least release it on DVD or something.
Yeah,
Because
that's
I'm
going to be
just
really
like,
difficult considering that they don't own the rights to those cartoons anymore. Unless of course, if you remember when they first aired like at least one of the episodes of Weinerville on the 90s or all that, I think they
yeah.
played like a Rugrats cartoon or something.
I think they did, but they didn't really show the cartoon segments. It was cool that it was back on TV for at least one night, but I'm just like, wow, this is like all we're gonna get of Weinerville. I
Yeah,
mean, that
and it's kind
show
of
had,
ironic considering that if you remember the very first time that we actually saw a commercial of the 90s or all that, Weinerville was like one of the things that they showcased.
oh my God, that was one of the things that really excited me. I'm like, what? They're actually gonna show Weinerville? This is great. And then years went by, and I'm like, okay, awesome. We get one night of Weinerville. Great. The
Yeah,
same thing with the
and I'm
Splat
pretty
as
sure that
well.
nobody saw it.
I really hate that. Also, maybe it got people to think it was a joke because if you remember, the night it aired was April 1st.
Oh yeah, that's
So
right. It was April Fool's Day. I remember.
I'm just like, all right, this is a cruel joke that they're playing on us. I mean, that show was the 1000th TV show that had a like the 1000th hour of Nickelodeon production. And they did that big festival or that big celebration, the whole Welcome to Weinerville episode.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that was good history. And I kind of wish that they would treat it like they're, I don't know, treat it like they're Nicktoons, I guess. Because the
Yeah,
Nicktoons,
unfortunately, when it comes to like their live action shows in the 90s, Weinerville just kind of like never really caught on with a lot of people. It wasn't like an Are You Afraid of the Dark or a Pete and Pete or all that.
yeah.
I think maybe because it was so wacky that it only connected to like a certain demographic of kids that I guess maybe that they felt that it probably wasn't like worth pushing so hard into.
Yeah. Because I think Nickelodeon probably wanted to follow like what the older kids are watching. And I guess the younger kids or the older kids were not really watching Weinerville, I guess. And that's
Yeah, I
probably
guess
why it got
so.
pushed out.
Yeah, I guess so. And from what I understand, whatever that the older kids were watching, the younger kids wanted to tune into as well. So I guess that those shows became more popular, and then as time went on, it just kind of like pushed into the side, and not a lot of people really remembered it. So yeah, I mean, I remember that there was not a lot of reruns of Weinerville until when even after like the show was over. So it ended in 94. It reran until 97, but even then schedules continued to change constantly.
Oh
But I
yeah.
mean, the one thing that I did give credit for Nickelodeon Studios and the channel at the time was that they were able to give the opportunity to have three specials for Weinerville. They had the New Year's special, they had the Hanukkah special, and they had the election special.
Yeah. Like I definitely remember watching those as well.
Yeah, so why don't you give your thoughts on those three specials?
The very first one that I saw them out of order, because New Year's went first, and I missed that one. But the Hanukkah special was my first one that I saw, and it kind of introduced me to like Jewish culture and everything. Because I was like, I can't remember. I think I was like probably like nine, still like 8 or 9 years old at the time, and it was really it was a really unique story. Hearing the story of Hanukkah told three times in like a sci-fi, crazy, outlandish kind of way. That whole special is just I don't know. It's out of nowhere. I mean, it does take itself seriously, but at the same time, it's extremely silly all at once because it's very compared to the other Weinerville specials, it's extremely fast paced and a little loud, but it's not bad though. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Same
I would
thing.
say out of all the three specials, I enjoyed watching that one the most because the New Year's special was so aimless. Like it's basically Cocktail Frank and the Weenies, and they're off in New York City going to perform a concert, and then Dottie and the gang are basically traveling to New York City. They got lost, and now they're trying to find where the concert's going to be held. And it's basically a paper thin story, and then jump in between, there's like a whole bunch of things going on all at once that has nothing to do with the main plot. And I feel like the Hanukkah special was able to, like, even though that it's basically three tellings of the Hanukkah story with the introduction with Mark Summers from Double Dare, where he was able to read off a brief summary of what Hanukkah is about. Then you have the story with the potato pancake aliens. Yes.
The set toes.
Yeah, Setos basically trying to get away from Dorcas because, they don't want to be ruled by him. And then, of course, you have Gonza Knocker, who's basically singing the story of Hanukkah using puppets. So yeah,
It's great.
it tells the story three times. And yeah, it does again, it take itself seriously, but at the same time, it has this crazy montage where it basically just has, like, them trying to fight off against Dorcas and his minions with the puppets and pouring all the oil, which the oil was supposed to be for the ship because yeah, okay, we're gonna get oil for our ship and find it in a supermarket.
Yes.
Okay,
UF oil, safe for lockers and space travel.
there you go. Right. Yeah, so yeah, even though that it does go all over the place, but I enjoyed myself a lot when watching that special because of just how crazy it gets. And
Sure.
then the election special, I didn't even watch that until like when around 2020 when the whole Donald Trump Joe Biden election was happening because I was trying to think of a good election day special to watch. I wanted to choose between whether I was going to talk about the Rocco's Modern Life one or I was
Hmm.
going to choose what was another one I was going to choose, but maybe a Jimmy Neutron one where Jimmy and Cindy were going up against each other, and then there was also Bolby who was in the third position. So yeah, there was that. And and then the Doug one, yeah, where they were trying to go for class treasurer.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, so eventually I did find out that some guy on YouTube named Chris Bryant posted up the election day special because it was lost media for over 20 years.
Oh, it was. I had a
And
hard
I
time
I
finding
could
that.
not find it for the life of me until that
Yeah.
guy, I don't know where he got it from, maybe from an old recording on VHS, but he was able to upload a lot of episodes on Weinerville, including that special. And then I thought, you know what? I might as well talk about that one because it's been a while since I talked about Weinerville.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it wasn't a bad special either. I really enjoyed it, especially Hugh J. Magnet, senior. He
yeah,
was
senior.
very man, he was very over the top, but for some reason he was kind of like a bad guy that you kind of like to hate, you know?
Yeah, yeah, I
Just
kind of like
so over
the
the top.
classic take on the, corrupted evil politician. That's not relevant at all.
Oh, of course, right?
Yeah, I know, right?
No, it's a made
Anyway,
up story.
no. It happens in a different dimension, not here. No, where everything is perfect. Anyway,
Oh, yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Flowers and
So
balloons and rainbows, absolutely.
right. Anyway, but yeah, I thought that was a really interesting idea that they decided to have Boney of all people run for president when they clearly had Dottie, who is a mayor. But okay, whatever.
Yeah, I felt Dottie fell back in the wayside on that one. I
Yeah,
kind of
she
wish there was
did.
more of
I
her in
mean,
that one.
like, yeah, she did appear in both of them, but she was barely. I don't think she even was in the third one. Maybe barely, like only like for a few seconds in the
Yeah.
opening, but that was pretty much it. Yeah, I understand why they did it. It was because Boney was super popular.
Oh yeah, totally. He was.
Yeah, I mean everybody loved Boney, even though that he's the loudmouth and he tells everybody to get out of here and he hates kids. And I thought, yeah, this is the perfect guy for your to run for president.
He gets stuff done.
Yeah, and the only thing he cared about was that, when
He wanted to eat.
yeah, he wanted to eat. There was the one of the perks of being president was there was a 24-hour all you can eat buffet.
Thank you, Katrina. I'm sorry, Ross Perot.
Yeah, Ross Perot, yeah. That was pretty much it. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, like I said, when I first talked about that special, I said it was definitely a mixed bag. Like there were some moments in which I thought, yeah, this is like way over the top, just like it was in the Hanukkah special. But I felt that there were some parts that were kind of like similar to the New Year's special, where it's kind of like dragging and it felt a little bit boring. So I still feel to this day that the Hanukkah special was probably like their best one, even though that has its own fair share of problems. But no, I mean, I think that that's great that they were able to get another chance to, finish off some parts of Weinerville that they probably couldn't finish at the studios because their show was already canceled.
Yeah, it was kind of a shame to hear that too. Much
Yeah,
like
and
you,
the only
I
times in which we got to see Mark again was both as one of the panelists in Figure It Out, and then of course as that guest starring role in Ned's Declassified.
yeah, like I said, that was what sort of because much like you, I sort of fell out of Nickelodeon, and then 2006 happened, and that's when that episode came out. I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, you know what? I kind of really want to go back and check out Weinerville because at the time, the internet and YouTube was really big. So I was like, there has to be more information. So I took it upon myself to rewrite the Weinerville Wikipedia page, and I made an episode guide, and I did a like whole synopsis of the show. Like I just completely redid it. And it still warms my heart that more people nowadays are acknowledging Weinerville and knowing what it was. Because back in '06 and '07, no one knew what that show was or even heard of it. So
Yeah. And for those who even remotely heard of it, they just thought it was like that weird show that aired on Nickelodeon in the 90s.
yeah.
Yeah, I just thought of that, kudos to you with doing that wiki page because you were able to basically keep intact all the information that has since long been gone from Weinerville because it hadn't aired on Nickelodeon for over a decade. And the only way that people even had access to it was like old recordings, which you did have. So you were
Yeah.
able to put in whatever that you were able to remember.
Yeah, I was amazed. I was able to remember as much as I did, but chances are, like I said, I watched the show over and over and over, obsessively probably, but it's all right. I'm seeing a psychologist about it, but it's
Okay,
all
good.
right. But around that time, that was when I first started talking to Mark and emails back and forth of questions, and he was nice enough to respond and everything. And to this day, he and I are pretty much friends. And
Oh, that's
I've
great.
and I've been friends with his son as well through like Facebook and Instagram. And it's just really cool to like have that relationship. And then, he's just really been such a tremendous guy. And it's just, I couldn't be more happy and thankful for that.
Yeah, and I think that people like you are responsible for kind of like reminding people about why Wienerville was such a great show to begin with.
Oh yeah, I just love it. Just totally. Because me myself, I'm an artist too, and so this has been the example I've been using for a while now. It's like outsider indie art, and it's nothing that's polished or anything or manufactured. It's just really rough around the edges, and it's about sort of piecing things together and just making something out of nothing. And to be honest, it just blows my mind of like you could just make something out of cardboard and just make it completely magical and just use your imagination and just express like what you have. And to me that just means the world to me, and I love it.
And yeah, I think that's Wienerville in a nutshell. Even though that it may seem rough around the edges, its creativity is what gives it its personality.
Oh, absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, so do you have any final words to say about Wienerville right before we conclude?
um I just want to give a shout out to Nickelodeon and say like release this show because it really is a creative show, and you know it gave a lot of viewers to your network, including,
That's going to be pretty
me and
difficult
Patricia
nowadays,
here.
considering that Paramount Plus is doing a major purge. So I wouldn't be surprised if maybe at somewhere down the line the VHS recordings are going to probably be the only way we're going to watch it.
Oh my Lord. Yeah. I got to give a shout out to a couple people too
Oh yeah,
who
go for it. Whoever you want.
yeah, who made sort of we have all of season 1 available now. Like all 28 episodes are available on YouTube, and I want to give a thank you to Meredith Vintage, who pretty much collects VHSs, and she did a really great job of uploading just not just Nickelodeon, but ABC and other channels through her YouTube channel. Isaiah Reed, who made a few episodes of season 2 available to people. Chris Bryant, of course, on Daily Motion. And I like to also shout out Splat Attack Podcast. That's sort of a podcast that I'm a part of as well.
Oh yeah, I
And
know those guys. We talked about Are You Afraid of the Dark, Ghost Island, and in the Shadows about last year.
oh, nice. Yeah, Brett and Alex are really, really great people. And it's nice to just do little bit work for them as well. I write some of the scripts and upload some reels as well. So really good people. And yeah, I would just say Weinerville is one of those shows that, much like you said, is sort of like an in joke to some people, but it holds a special place in 90s Nickelodeon hearts, I would say.
Yeah,
And
I would
that's what makes it
definitely
so
do
special.
agree. Yes, and I do agree that all those people deserved all those shout outs, especially since they were the ones who essentially kept Wienerville alive. And I also want to give a shout out to Mark himself, who created the show. All the people who worked on it, like Ray Abruzzo, and then David Jordan and Scott Fellows, and all the people involved. I want to give shout outs to them, and also to Nickelodeon who produced it. And yeah, I would say that for people who are curious about Wienerville and are wondering what, even what we're talking about, you go watch it on YouTube. And
Are you still listening? Do you know what we're talking about here, everybody?
yeah, if you're interested, then please go check it out on YouTube. And if it's a show that really appeals to you, then I would just say watch all the episodes and even watch the specials, even though that they could be a bit of a mixed bag. But yeah, it's a show that even till to this day is pretty unique. Even when they try to do like interesting takes on variety shows, even the ones geared for both kids and adults, like Weird Al did his own variety show that lasted for 13 episodes. Then there was Wonder Shows in Tim and
Oh my
Eric.
God.
Yes, Tim and Eric,
Wow.
awesome show, great job. The Eric Andre show, like even though those shows are geared towards adults, but they do follow that same structure of a variety show, even though a lot of it is wrong.
I can't believe you mentioned Wonder Shows, and wow, that show is unbelibliable.
It
Like
is insane.
it's really insane. I don't know how they got away with the stuff that
I
they
don't
did.
know how they got away with it either, but they did. And it's actually interesting because, going in full circle, the guy who created Wonder Shows and was the director of Pee-wee's Big Holiday.
Oh my God, that's right, Chapman.
Yes, so
Wow.
all right, we've gone full circle. I think we covered more than enough.
I
So
know his scene then when Pee-wee screamed and his mouth was the eyeballs. That was probably a scene he
he
directed.
probably, he probably did. Oh God. All right. I think we're done here. So listen, Manny,
Okay.
thank you so much for coming on by to the show. I really do appreciate it.
Oh, of course. Thank you so much. And it was really a pleasure.
Yeah, so why don't you plug and promote your stuff?
Okay, if you want to follow me on Instagram, I am J Oramas 25. That's JORAMAS 25. And if you want to follow my artwork, it's HumbleArtsy on Instagram. And coincidentally, my YouTube channel is called HumbleArtsy. And take a look out for my 30th anniversary episode of Weinerville. Eric Von First and Second takes over my special.
Awesome.
And there might be an episode on there. I don't know.
We'll see. All right. And as for me, you can check out my work. My blog is oldschoollane.net. I have a YouTube page, which is youtube.com/oldschoollane, facebook.com/oldschoollane. I'm no longer on Twitter because Twitter is being awful. So I'm on Mastodon, which is at Patricia Miranda. You can check out the podcast on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Radio Public, all those places. New episodes will go there first, then they'll go up in a few days on YouTube. As of the recording of this, tomorrow is the Weinerville 30th anniversary virtual reunion live stream. So if you're interested in tuning in, it'll be on tomorrow, which is on May 9th, and it'll be on 2 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. We have a lot of cool guests who are going to be joining us for the show. And we would really love it if you can give your shout outs either on a 30-second video, which you can email to me at oldschoollane86@gmail.com, or you can go on, well, I mean, I guess Twitter is, probably not going to be the place anymore, but I'll probably still check there. But if on Mastodon, if you have a Mastodon account, use the hashtag Weinerville30 if you want to send fan art to me. I'll showcase it during the live stream. So, yeah, let us know in the comments below about your memories of Weinerville. Who are your favorite characters? What was your favorite episode? What did you think of the specials? And also, what were your thoughts on Weinerville as a whole? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Were you somewhere in the middle? Would you even introduce it to friends because you generally liked it, or just for the crazy lols? Let us know. That's it. Hope to see you around soon, and take care.
What's up? What's up?
In Weinerville.
What's up? What's up?
In Weinerville. 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 Weinerville.